What's up, everybody? I'm Coach Tyler with Fencer's Edge, and today we are going to be going over how to make the different saber cuts. We're going to be going over how to properly make the cuts and how to correct a lot of the mistakes that I see beginner fencers making. Alright, so one of the most important parts to making your saber cuts is the distance at which you're making them. So whether you're working on a target as I am now, or you're fencing in a bout, if you are making your touches really close and you're hitting, from the bottom half of your blade down on your target, you're in way too close. You shouldn't be getting in that close unless your opponent is like counterattacking you or something like that. But for the most part, you want to get really familiar with what your maximum scoring distance is. So when you get on the strip and you're fencing somebody, you'll be able to recognize that maximum scoring distance and take advantage of it right away. So if you're working on a target, you want to get familiar with what's your maximum scoring distance. Now, the maximum scoring distance is the furthest you can be away from your target and still touch. So you should be hitting with no more than the top inch or two of your blade. Alright, so in saber fencing, there's three main targets to the body, three main cuts to the body that you can make, and we're going to be going over those, and we're also going to be going over some different cuts that can get around parries, and they're a little bit more tricky. There's also attacks that you can make to your opponent's arm. I won't be demonstrating those today because unfortunately I don't have a practice partner and my dummy has no arms. So I'll make a video later on about some attacks to the arm or the wrist in saber fencing. Alright, so a big mistake that I see a lot of beginners making is that when they make their cuts, they will cock their wrist back like this and chop down on their opponent, okay? Now, when you pull your wrist back, it does a few things. Number one, it telegraphs your attack. It lets your opponent know, hey, I'm about to cut, and it gives them time to make the parry or to block you. The other thing that it does is when you pull back, you're opening your arm to stop cuts and counterattacks to the arm. Also, if you're attacking off the line and both fencers are coming together and you're pulling your arm back and they're extending straight in, they're going to give the touch to your opponent because he's leading with his arm, and you are pulling your wrist back before you're making the cut. So this is a really bad habit that you should not be doing when you're saber fencing. So the proper way to make the head cut is your arm should extend straight forward, and then at the last second you're going to squeeze with your fingers to finish the cut. So the arm extends, and then at the last second the fingers squeeze to complete the cutting action. Okay? And you'll notice that when I make the touch, my point bounces off and stops about a couple inches off of the target that I'm trying to hit. Okay, so I'm not hitting and driving down. Okay, I'm also not hitting and pulling away. I'm extending, and the touch happens there, and my blade stops about 2 to 3 inches off of the target area that I'm hitting. Okay, so that finger squeeze is really crucial to make your cuts quick and accurate. Okay, so it's the squeezing of the fingers and the flexing of the wrist. The wrist kind of pushes down a little bit to make the cut. It doesn't overextend, but the wrist does move a little bit to complete that cutting action. All right, so that is the head cut. Now for the flank cut, or the 3 line. A lot of mistakes I see beginner fencers make is when they want to attack the flank over here, they will pull the wrist back. Again, cocking the wrist before they're firing, all right? Again, this is the same thing as the head touch. When I pull like this, I'm telegraphing my attack. letting my opponent know where I'm going to cut before I actually cut. I'm also opening my arm to stop cuts, and I'm also showing preparation if I'm attacking off the line. Okay? So the proper way to make the flank touch is your arm should extend, and as your arm is extending, your wrist is rotating, palm down. And then again, to complete the touch, I'm going to squeeze with my fingers to complete that touch. My arm is not going to pull through like this. Okay? That's another big mistake I see, is that fencers will pull their arm, making the cut with their whole arm. All right? With all three of these main cuts, your arm is going directly into the center of your opponent's target area, and your fingers are squeezing to complete the touch. Okay? So I'm not pulling my arm, I'm not making a chopping action with my arm like this. My arm is going straight forward, and my fingers are squeezing at the end of the touch to complete the touch. All right, so now for the belly attack, or the foreline, again, my hand's going to come straight forward. I'm going to rotate the wrist, this time palm up towards the sky. And to complete the touch, my fingers are going to squeeze here to complete the touch. So again, my arm extends, fingers squeeze, and I'm bouncing off 2 to 3 inches off of the target area. Okay? You don't want to pull the arm back and make the cut. You don't want to use the arm to cut through, pulling the arm across. You want the arm to come straight to the center of your opponent's target area and squeeze to make that touch. Okay? Now, if you're going for that direct attack, your arm and your wrist should turn as your arm is extending, right? So your opponent shouldn't be able to tell whether you're coming head, whether you're coming flank, or whether you're coming to the belly, because all three arm extensions are the same. So I'm not turning my wrist before my arm extends, letting my opponent know where I'm going to make the cut before I actually make the cut. Now, the time that you would want to turn the wrist before you extend is if you're making a feint attack, but we'll talk about that in a later video. All right, so we got our 3 basic touches. We've got our head touch, we've got our flank touch, and we've got our belly touch. Okay? Now, let's get into some of the other cuts and why they're effective. Okay? So the next cut that we're going to do is an underneath flank touch. So we're going to come up underneath our opponent's arm. So if I were my opponent, I was right-handed, my guard position was right here, this attack is going to come underneath my guard and up into my elbow here. Okay? So for this cut, the point is going to drop down, and then to complete the cut, I'm going to lift up on my wrist, coming up underneath my opponent's guard. Okay? So again, my point drops, my arm extends, and I'm lifting up with my wrist to come up underneath my opponent's guard here. Okay? So it drops down and comes up. All right? All right, so the next one is the pull-through belly cut. Now this one is going to start just like my normal belly cut. Okay? So my arm extends and my wrist turns. But the only difference with this one is once I've made the touch, I'm going to turn the wrist. And now pulling through and turning this wrist over is going to add the cut-through action. Now I want to make sure that when I'm making this touch, this wrist turn is allowing my point to slide through the target area and that I'm rotating over. Okay? I want to make sure that I'm not pulling through with my whole arm. My arm stays centered on my opponent's target area, and I should finish right here with my guard in the center of my opponent's target area. Okay? The other thing that's really important with this one is the distance at which you're making the pull through. If I am in really close, I'm not going to be able to pull through. Okay? So I want to make sure that I'm at the proper distance, so when I'm pulling through, I'm just barely making contact with my opponent's target area, okay? I also want to make sure that I'm pointing my thumb at my opponent when I'm pulling through, okay? So my arm extends, I point my thumb at my target area, at my opponent, and I'm rotating the wrist. So from palm up to palm down to complete that action. Pull through, okay? So the next cut is going to be a point attack, okay? So for this one, my point is going to drop straight into the target area, and I'm going to turn my wrist so my palm is facing down towards the ground, and I'm just going to extend straight in to make the touch. So again, my point drops, my wrist turns, and I'm extending straight in, okay? So it's really important that when you're making this touch, your wrist is turned so your palm is down. It's not normal here, and it's not palm up. Okay, so we're turning this wrist and going straight in here with the palm towards the ground. Again, pointing the thumb at your opponent. All right, so the next cut is going to be a back edge cut. Now for this one, you're going to get in a little bit closer to your opponent, and this one is really good at coming around your opponent's four parry. So if I were my opponent and I come over to make this four parry here, this back edge cut is going to reach around my opponent's four parry, and I'm going to be scoring with the back edge of my blade. Okay? So my arm extends, my wrist turns, and I'm reaching around my opponent's parry and hitting with the back edge of my blade. Okay, so again, I'm turning my wrist, palm towards the ground, reaching out a little bit further to the outside so I'm not straight on with my guard in the center of my opponent's target area. This one I'm going to be reaching out to the side, and I'm going to just pull back on my fingers and wrists to hit with the back edge of the blade. So reaching around my opponent's parry and coming in with the back edge of the blade. All right, everybody, that does it for this video. I hope these tips help you improve your fencing game, and I hope they help you score that winning touch. If you guys are enjoying these videos, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment below. If you are really enjoying these videos, please consider becoming a patron supporter of this channel. Any amount that you can contribute will greatly help me produce more awesome content for you. Until next time, guys, have fun, work hard, and practice.